Welcome, everybody, to the show. This is Counterclipping show number 187 for August 26th, 2024. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Tonight's topic is the long-awaited Best of GMT Part 2, where we will get through another entire 5 years of GMT output. And I'm skipping all the expansions, so that's the level of output we're talking about here. Clipping this week is Thunder on the Mississippi, the latest Great Campaigns of the American Civil War game from Multi-Man Publishing. Now that I have finished my last epic saga from Multi-Man Publishing, The Greatest Day Utah Beach, which took a long friggin' time. Yes, it got organized in baggies. I may revisit that at some point, but not right now. So most of the other games in the series are also baggied, so it's not like I'm breaking my rule for the series or anything like that. So in any case, this is one that I am very much looking forward to getting on the table, and the only reason it's not punched and clipped and ready to go already is because I had already been working on Utah Beach by the time I went to WBC to buy this thing. So, would like to remind everybody to thumbs up the video or like the video or whatever it is that you do on the platform that you're on. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Big shout out to both the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair, without whose support and encouragement we wouldn't be able to keep doing this, as well as our good friends at Noble Knight Games, the official sponsor of the Counterclipping show, and we will hear from those good friends at Noble Knight later on. So once again, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. I'll remind everybody that there are a pile of links to help support the show in the video description, including the Patreon page. The patrons are... I don't have a lot of patron perks, to be honest about it, but sometimes patrons get a little early peek at stuff. That does happen from time to time, plus the 3D printing models, which is still alive and going, although I haven't added anything new since the tray dividers for the Cube for Me trays landed there like a month and a half ago. Super chats and super stickers are on. It's a great way to support the channel, as well as get your comment highlighted. There'll probably be at least 100 plus people here tonight, and I will miss comments. I am guaranteed not to miss, or not at least overlook accidentally, a super chat or super sticker. Where am I putting these? Cavalry, there we go. Not a huge amount of unit counters in this game, which is kind of true of GCACW games in general. There's like a quarter of a counter sheet each of Union and Confederate, and everything else is markers or manpower or whatever. So in any case, my mic gain is slightly down. Let me check that, because the reason how can I check that? Edit audio. How the fuck can I do this? I know what's going on with that, because I actually dialed it down because Dan was down. Oh, this is actually why. How's that? That should be considerably better. I actually didn't swing the boom arm of the microphone close to me. That ought to help. How about that? Let's hope we don't have any glitches tonight, Perfidious Albion. Mike, thanks for mentioning that. That was me being an idiot. In any case, before we get any further, let's say hello to B. Atkins, B. Red, and Bert Matus. Bible Board Games, Bill Simone, Ched Kennedy, Chet Bill, Commando Solo 193, Down Wenard is here, David Zell, Ed Holtzman, Eric Goebel, HUN644 New, the legend himself, Fucko is in the house, Jason W., Jeffrey Edwards, Joe Okabayashi, John Clark, Carl Crater, from the Wargame Bootcamp, Kyle Harris, Lee Grant Manders, Marty Sample is here. Marty, thanks for coming by. Meandering Mike, Panzer Division Lair, Patrick of Patrick's Tactics and Tutorials, Paw, Perfidious Albion, Perry Sparopoulos, Philip Musket, Sean Sullivan, Tailwind, Doug from the Tabletop's Edge, Tim Greenhot, Tony Mammal, and Vicky. And I apologize if I missed anybody. I know that I did. It's YouTube's fault as usual. So the usual thing is, I've explained this before, where your name drops off the list of current participants if you haven't said anything in like a couple of minutes. It's not a lot of time, so as I can attest. So we are drinking Mayor Pingree again. I'm trying to get rid of this bottle so I can reclaim the cork. The last attempt to do that did not work. And it helps that it's pretty good. So bottled at a healthy 47%. Haven't seen Mr. John C. I assume he will be by at some point in the very near future. So in any case, let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. let's do a campaign update for the Noble Knight campaign. I may have more substantive news on this next week, but this week, let's just give us an update as to where we are. So, for those who don't know, probably that's basically nobody in this chat, but here we go. So, as part of our sponsorship deal with Noble Knight Games, we have an affiliate link. That link is in the video description. And if you're going to buy stuff from Noble Knight anyway, and they have a lot of stuff, use that affiliate link, and I will get a little bit back in store credit. And we are saving up that store credit for the remaining 4 now SPI soapboxes that I still want and can justify buying. There's a couple that I can't, like Objective Moscow, because I have it in a Ziploc. There's at least one more that I have that I'm not buying. Star Force Trilogy, we're not going after that. We're not going for Conflicts in American History because it's a purely collector's piece. It doesn't contain anything that the blue and gray quads don't. So I have the blue and gray quad. I don't need Conflicts in American History. It is a cool collector's piece, don't get me wrong. And Wellington's Victory, because I have that in the TSR version, which is not the one I'd want, but it's the one that I've got. So there we go. However, I might have an update in the next couple of weeks on this. The credit did flow in. I just haven't pushed any buttons yet. I haven't made the decision as to which button to push. But a button will be getting pushed in the next couple of weeks. I can guarantee that. So once again, thanks everybody for their support. Mike is taking a course on card game design. There you go. Awesome. Sounds good. Ben W., thanks for stopping by. And Bible Board Games, Timon 6219, and Ben W. Everybody, welcome to the show. We are, of course, as usual, here every Monday night at this time. I feel like this particular bourbon is giving me a little bit of heartburn. So I just need to make sure I'm mixing the water in and everything will be okay. In the ticker, there's my email address in case anybody wants to get a hold of me, and a link to the Ardwulf Lair Discord community, which is a reasonably active place nowadays, which is awesome. So feel free to use that. If you're watching this after the fact and the link doesn't work anymore, then just email me and I will give you a personalized invitation, and everything will be fine. People do occasionally reach out to me for that. So, all right. So we do have a GMT newsletter update today for August 2024. So let's start with that. Let me fix this and this. There we go. Okay. So this released last week. Usually these things show up on Monday, but not necessarily all the time. And as usual, we will not be reading every single line in here. If you would like to do that, go over to gmtgames.com and do that. I will be hitting the highlights. So Steve Rochelle, thanks for stopping by. All right, so news from Gene. This is essentially about, in this time around, I, Napoleon. Now, if you haven't seen the Chit Show from a couple of weeks ago where we got Ted and I and Dan talking about I, Napoleon, it's a very impressive game. It's actually kind of sitting on my table at the moment. Haven't really done anything with it yet other than start setting it up. But Mike over at Meandering Mike has a video on that. I would recommend checking out his video before you try to set it up. Now, the gist of this is that I, Napoleon is garnering a fair amount of attention both inside and outside the wargaming community. Therefore, don't be hugely surprised if it sells out reasonably quickly. I kind of joked about that with Ted when we had him on, but no, I think it's actually going to go out of print sometime sooner rather than later. So in any case, game looks cool. I'll report back when I've actually played it. All right, GMT annual sale, September 3rd through the 9th. That is next week, folks. So fasten your wallets on that. I'm not sure I have a whole lot to buy, but I'll buy something, I'm sure. GMT is looking for designers of solitaire modes. Reach out to Jason Carr. And I do think it's funny that we have to do this. But, I mean, that's not a slap on GMT. We actually have to do that. Twilight Struggle World Series in Las Vegas in late September. This is the World Series of Board Gaming thing. GMT is now selling Shakos' games, and I'm not sure if this is all of Shakos' games or not, but these are the 3 that I'm looking for. So they also have Border States and Saladin. Actually, Border States looks intriguing. Saladin actually looks beautiful as well. So... Tony from Tony's Board Life. Tony, thanks for stopping by at the library working on schoolwork. I can sympathize with that. In any case, these operational Napoleonic games are supposed to be really, really good. So I would like to get those at some point, but I haven't yet. So here's some more about I, Napoleon. Here's two. So these are games, I think, that were originally with GMT and got moved over to Worthington because they got dropped off the P500, and now they have popped up over at Worthington Games. So if you're interested in either of these things from GMT, head over to Worthington and check them out. If you haven't read this already, which you probably have. GMT Talk, which is their new podcast / YouTube thing. They've got a bunch of episodes of this. And we've got, did I mention a bunch of people from GMT will be here on the Chit Show tomorrow? So just tune in for that. All right, so what's shipping? We'll talk about that when we talk about the shipping stuff. I think this is the series that I was talking about. Napoleon 1805, Napoleon 1813, and Napoleon 1814, something like that. Those three games are that series. We'll talk about this. Not there yet, P500. Think about ordering this stuff. I really kind of want to see Napoleon in Egypt make it, but the rest of them have probably not been here for too long. Hammer and Sickle's been up for 3 months, maybe, something like that. In any case, Summit 2024. This is the SD Hist event. I will be buying tickets for this pretty soon. I will be buying tickets for this in the next couple of weeks. Let me put it that way. This is the SD Hist Con thing in San Diego in November, and I'm not sure if that's Veterans Day weekend, actually. I'm glad I saw the date, though. So looking forward to seeing Harold and company out there, and we will have them on fairly soon to talk about that event, so don't worry about that. In any case, In the Shadows, the French Resistance 43 and 44. This game looks kind of neat. Here is the back of the box. GMT1 development. Check this out if you want. Some stuff on Founders of Ravik, which is the Rainer Knizia game that ties into the John Butterfield game. That's why it's interesting to me. We've got designer interviews, which do include our round with Ted, which was awesome. Bound Solitaire has an interview with Non-Breaking Space on her podcast, which is also great. And Zilla talks to Volko. And the Player's Aid talked to Bruno Senegalio and Dave Stifler about the Battles of the American Revolution series. Does that make sense? I didn't watch that video. Does that make sense? I'm not really worried about the ticket. I can go harangue Harold for that. In any case, GMT Online, all kind of links down here. All right, so new P500 editions. 3 of them are reprints. Downfall, big shock there. That sold very well and has been very well received. Pendragon, I'm stunned that this hasn't gotten a second printing yet. And Vijayanagara, both of the last 2 are coin games. The lone new entry is one that I and a bunch of other people have been waiting for quite a while. This is Stepping into Hell, a volume in the Great Battles of the American Civil War series dealing with the Battle of the Wilderness. We've talked about this as something that was being worked on among a pile of other GBACW products. And this is the next big one in line, and I believe this has already made its number. I wasn't actually going to talk much about this on its own because, hey, I'm ordering it. Al Smith is the designer, and we don't have a ton of details here, but we do have it's 4 maps, 2 small scenario maps, 8 counter sheets, pretty big game. And for a pretty big game, $67 seems incredibly inexpensive. So that's pretty exciting, I should say. All right, we've covered that. Let's move to P500 removals. We do have one this month. We don't always. In this case, the license for GMT to publish the deluxe 5th edition of Russian Campaign has run out. So the reprint of that had been on P500 is kaput. So if you want that, you're probably going to have to wait until it resurfaces somewhere else or run down a copy basically immediately. And it is a really nice package. And it's probably for like the serious Russian Campaign players who don't nevertheless feel like stepping up to Russia Besieged. It's the package to have. If you want to try Russian Campaign like I did, I recommend doing what I did, which is to play the Compass version, which much more closely resembles the original Jedco version of the game. So, and here are the teasers. So 130 people had ordered this. They are out of luck. Let's see here. Trying to get the stuff in order here so I can put the things away correctly. Ed Holtzman says that Worthington has Divine Right in stock and will start selling extra copies to non-Kickstarter backers from the website soon. I might pick this up. We'll see. I'm kind of being a tightwad at the moment. For a variety of reasons. So the teasers for P500 are a new battle game featuring 2 late 17th or early 18th century engagements. This could be a new entry in the Musket and Pike series or whatever the spin-off of that is. There's a couple of them now. A game featuring battles from the War of the Breton Succession. This is the first I've heard of the War of Breton Succession, possibly. So I don't know anything about that, nor do I have any idea of what the battles will be, or if it's part of another series or what. But I will be interested in hearing about it when it does hit P500. A new game from Sekigahara designer Matt Calkins. I haven't played Sekigahara or Charioteer, but certainly Sekigahara has had a long-standing impact, so I expect folks to take notice when this comes up. We have a tactical battle game set in the Spanish Civil War. I don't have any idea what that's about, and we have a new game from Bruce Harper. Now, those of us who have been paying attention do know what the new game from Bruce Harper is, and in fact, Bruce and I, when I had Bruce on the show on Thursday, we had a special interview with Bruce Harper on Thursday. Go check that out if you haven't seen it. Breton Succession's part of the 100 Years' War? Okay. That would make sense. If so, Ijan, I think that's logical, but I don't know anything about it. So for those who don't know, the Bruce Harper game is something that he's working on. Let's put it that way, and we will have Bruce on to talk about it in detail when Bruce is ready to do that, or GMT, I should say, is ready to do that. At this point, I'd rather not run the risk of saying something that turns out to be wrong. Let's put it that way. All right, yearly bestsellers. None of these are surprising. Coming events, a variety of coming events, including the World Series of Board Gaming in Las Vegas. Fall 24 weekend at the Warehouse in October. AuckCon in October. This presumably is in New Zealand. Yeah, I guess so. Here is, let's see, the War Room Play Wolfpack with Mike Berticelli. That sounds cool. Yeah, this is my thought, actually, and I forget the name of the series, but it's Banish All Their Fears is the game. I haven't tried that yet, but I am impressed with what I have seen of the command system. Apparently, it's kind of a hassle to set the thing up, but, I mean, I've set up Case Blue. How bad can it possibly be? But I'm really intrigued by that system, but I would like to play it before buying another game in the series. As HUN644 New says that this is called Musket and Bayonet. David Imperato asks whether the Spanish Civil War game be a combat commander expansion. I suppose that's true. However, I am inclined to take a tactical battle game set in the Spanish Civil War to mean that it is its own thing, or that it is a standalone thing, which is either one of those things is possible. So, after all, Combat Commander has had standalones in the past. So, all right. Here's a bunch of stuff. Here's an article about, or a little piece anyway, about The Art of Roger B. McGowan, which I have already shown you in its own video. It is a terrific book, terrific resource, and it's just gorgeous. Highly recommended. Counter trays are back in stock if you want to buy those. 2-player scenario for Conquest and Consequence. I'd be curious to see that, but I'm not curious enough. I don't actually own Conquest and Consequence, so but I have played it and I liked it. So, all right. Ed Holtzman mentions from the Kickstarter from Worthington, first pallets of Divine Right to be in the warehouse on Monday. They'll do some inspections and shipping this week. That's presumably to the Kickstarter backers, and then they'll start shipping to randos like myself who are thinking about ordering it. I haven't even bought one of these amazing Combat Commander throws from Kai yet. So there's that. All right, so a bunch of extra stuff for various things. Getting to, here's Zilla and Volko, 2 photogenic youngsters. This is Inside GMT. They're talking to Imperial Eagles designer. Let's see what else we got here. I'm looking for, here we go. Okay. So, charging on September 17th, more or less. 3 Labyrinth things, including the core game and an expansion and the 3-inch box if you don't have that already, and Red Dust Rebellion. Reasonably sure, without checking, that if you buy the new main core game of Labyrinth with this P500, that you will be getting the 3-inch box. So I bought the box separately, actually. And then Red Dust Rebellion, which a lot of people are looking, including myself, are looking forward to. So next charges and shipments, they'll talk about next month. But we're probably looking at October, more or less, in that case. Might be early October. All right, shipping now is battle, and by now I think that does mean that probably a good chunk of the people who have ordered these have gotten them already. Battle Line 12th printing. That's a lot of printings, man. Next War Iran from I feel terrible. Well, as part of the Next War series. And then Normandy 44 and its mounted map in 3-inch box. I don't think it needs a 3-inch box, but then again, I don't think it needs a mounted map either. In the Warehouse, first map of September, a mounted map for France. Mitch Land, thank you. Mike, thank you. I am embarrassed. The France 40 mounted map, in addition to the 4 things that we just talked about. And then at the printer, we've got some movement over here. Where is this stuff? There we go. All right, we have some movement over here at the printer, but there's no ship date yet. Commands and Colors Expansion 1. Common Charia second printing, Congress of Vienna, Holland 44 second edition, its mounted map, and Wolf Pack. And then having gone to the printer since the last update, includes Fields of Fire Deluxe plus its update kit plus the Battle for Normandy Deluxe, which is, I mean, that's going to be a big deluxe. And Mark Herman's book, Wargames According to Mark. So I think you would be making a... Let me put it this way. If you're listening to this show, I think you would be making a big mistake not ordering that. Going to the printer late this... let's stack these. Going to the printer late this month. Okay. There we go. Our World at War 4th printing, the mounted maps, Bruce and I talked about that too, and fighting formations, the U.S. 29th Infantry Division. I am super curious to see that, I have to admit. Admittedly, I haven't played fighting formations. That might be a good place to start, actually. I hear it's good. I am super interested to see whether whoever designed it and or developed it talked to Joe Balkowski or not, because it would seem to me to be an oversight. If they didn't, I suspect that they did. So... yes, Christopher Smith, the one, again, I had the 2-inch box, and then I ordered the empty box and put my 2-inch contents into the 3-inch box, so I haven't actually bought a 3-inch box version of the game itself. In final art and proofing, 1 to 2 months away from print, including our own Stigler's by Swords and Bayonets, Hoplite second printing, that's been in the pipeline for a long time. In the Shadows, No Retreat, Russian Front Deluxe, 3rd printing, Seljuk by our other friend Justigard, the huge pile of Space Empire stuff, which I am very much looking forward to, and the new edition of Talon, which I have not ordered and won't. I have played it. I don't need it. It's not bad, don't get me wrong, but it kind of plays... I mean, I wouldn't use it with Space Empires 4X, and to me it plays a lot like Federation Commander. I would just play that. In final art and proofing, we're not going to read all these off, and there are no new additions to this particular stage in the production queue, nor is there a in the art department and ready for final art and proofing. However, pending artist assignment has added the designer edition of A House Divided. Now, they've already, somebody's been working on the map, I can tell you that, but I'm not sure how much farther they've got than that. So that is, I'm going to buy that. That is not a question. And in fact, out of this particular pile, House Divided, Defiance, Epipoli, Order and Opportunity, and Zizka, I'm seriously considering all of those. So here's a bunch of links to a bunch of very fine content creators, which obviously do not include myself. Project updates and sample art for... Let me zoom out on this one, because I really rather like this new cover for Fields of Fire, I gotta tell you. That is nice looking. It doesn't have the thing that I've been noticing with GMT covers, certain GMT covers of late, not all of them, where the title itself feels kind of small. This feels like the right size. I think it's a cool image. It looks fresh while still looking like a GMT game. So In any case, here is the cover for By Swords and Bayonets by our very own Alan Dickerson, a.k.a. Stigler, which will be the next volume in the Great Battles of the American Civil War series. This is Big Bethel, Mill Springs, New Bern, and Second Rappahannock, all small battles. This will be a great place to get started with GBACW. There's the back of the Fighting Formations box. Here's some counter sheets. I'll let everybody, I'm going to blow through this stuff. Here's the pretty abstract looking map for Cross Bronx Expressway. I don't think we expected that to be on a hex map. And some extra stuff for them. Here's the map for Coius Regio. It doesn't look like it from this picture, and it might not even if you zoom into it, but this is a hex map. I have seen this map in videos because they had somebody, I don't know if it was the designer or not, had this game at Il Biota con in Spain, and Stuka Joe had it in a video, and I'm like, ooh, what's that? That looks cool. And then they announced that it was coming from GMT, and I was like, well, that works for me. This game looks terrific. 30 Years War. So, all right. Clark Commando 1983. Mark, thanks for stopping by. Hope you're feeling okay. Mark Herman is here as well. Mark, thank you for stopping by. All the Marks are here. Here is a second edition map for Next War Taiwan. I don't know if that's something I need or not. My guess would be no. Battles of the American Tri-Pack number 2. Epipoli. We've got a whole bunch of good stuff here. Some more stuff for Charioteer. Here's the big rundown of reprints. We don't need to go through that line by line. And then that is basically the entire GMT update at that time. Let's pull this back up. I should really try and fix that, or figure it out, I should say. It's not actually broken. But in any case, Mark, I've already told everybody to go buy your book. Everybody, go buy Mark's book. So if for some reason you have been foolhardy and have not done so already, that is. Trying to put these in order, and they're just not gonna cooperate in order. I'm afraid. It's 16th Corps, 17th Corps. This is all Western theater, obviously. There we go. That's actually all the Union. Literally since we started 27 minutes ago, I clipped all the Union counters. So I imagine, well, that's what they said, right? Or maybe I got that from Mark, actually, that there wouldn't be a ton of extras, which isn't really a shock because GMT is not a book publisher, right? So I would get it while you can, because I suspect you're going to be paying through the nose for it in a year from now after it's sold out, right? In any case, let me cue up the actual topic. We are going to be starting in the year 1995, and we will be running until the year 1999. And the reason why, there's 22 games that GMT released in this period, and I didn't add 2000 because they released like 10 games in 2000, and that would have been too long of a list for me to get through in one show. So we'll see how this goes. We might have some extra time at the end. So let me cue this up. Let's pull this and then this. The first game that GMT, well, I don't know if it's the first game or not. It's the first one that BGG lists. So it's these. I have no idea what order in 1995 these things are released. And in fact, I had absolutely forgotten that this was a thing that had ever occurred. This is Formula Motor Racing, a card game from Rainier Knizia. So remember that Rainier Knizia has done a decent amount of stuff for GMT, including the just mentioned 12th printing of Battle Line, which I have played in, which is fun. So I don't have anything to say about this other than that it's a racing card game, and it's by Rainier Knizia, and it was released by GMT in 1995. That is literally the extent of my knowledge. However, we do immediately get into something that is a little more my bag, but not entirely. Crisis Sinai 1973. Now, I mean, I had seen this, so I knew it existed, but I didn't know this was a John Prados game. It would not necessarily have even occurred to me that John Prados might have done work with GMT, but here we go. I don't think that despite the similarity in name and trade dress, as far as I can tell, and I'm completely unfamiliar with this, as far as I can tell, this might be, Marty, but I don't have, I'll say something when we come to a game I have, but I don't have either of the two that have been mentioned so far. But that's good information, so there you go. Thanking Mark for it. Rebel Fury, which is an outstanding release. Let's see here. Put Grant right here. And the substitute brigades right there. And that's like literally the entire Union Army. All right, so Crisis Sinai 1973. So this is Arab-Israeli, or part of the 1973 October War, the Sinai part of it. And I'll tell you what, this says artist Roger McGowan. I don't know if Roger did the map or not, but I like this map. This actually kind of looks, to me, like it's almost got a little bit of a Rick Barber vibe going on. Or at least reminds me of Edelweiss. Good looking map. The counters are not that great. These are vintage GMT counters. Let me put it that way. These are very similar looking counters to what we saw in like Air Bridge to Victory. Not about very similar, but somewhat similar at least to the kind of counters we saw in Air Bridge to Victory and things like the first version of Great Battles of Alexander. So if you're interested in this topic, the rating's not super duper high, but I don't care what BGG says about it. And it's a John Prados game. And John Prados, not everything was a masterpiece, but John Prados always had something interesting to say. So, and Mark Herman says it's a good game. So that ought to give you some inclination to maybe pick this up. What is it going for on the secondary market? Not a giant pile of money. So there you go. Is there videos on it? Not a thing. Nope. So this is one that's kind of dropped off the radar. Even though this Arab-Israeli war anyway is a reasonably popular topic, we get a decent number of games. I don't know about decent, but I mean every so often we do get a game on this. It's not a totally ungamed situation. And as we can see here, there's kind of a decent amount of stuff in the box too. This does very much remind me with the player aids on the colored cardstock and all that stuff. This is very much remind me of GMT stuff from the period. But here's another one that I don't have. This is Glory. Now, Stigler has had good things to say about this, and I would actually like to try this system out. This is a Richard Berg system. There are 3 volumes in the Glory series, and together I want to say they cover 6 to 8 different battles. This one has 1st and 2nd Manassas and Chickamauga, which is a little bit of a weird combination, but I also kind of see the appeal in having a game from the Eastern Theater and a game from the Western Theater. Neil Badke says this was one of his early GMT games, which is cool. It was one of their early games. Remember, they started in 1991, something like that. So they had not been around for a long time at this point. Now, if we look at the counters here, we're going to see that their resolution's not super awesome. But these are way more colorful than the Crisis Sinai 1973 counters. And this was released in the same year. Artist credit from, that's interesting, from BGG anyway, says Rick Barber and Roger McGowan. But if we look at the map, yeah, that's got a splash of Rick Barber too, I'd say. I mean, that's probably a Rick Barber map. Perhaps not at when his style had not yet become quite as distinctive as it would later become, I think. John Stanley says he thinks we're talking about Crisis Sinai 1973 here. Now, does anybody, because I think I said this, I'm not sure if I did. As far as I can tell, Crisis Sinai is not the same game system as Crisis Korea. If that's not correct, somebody speak up in the chat. Somebody will know. So anyway, Glory has a pretty good reputation as a somewhat lighter implementation and a one step higher in scale, because I think this is brigade level, of a lot of the same ideas that Berg also employed in Great Battles of the American Civil War, at least the GMT flavor of that. So this is it's not like high on my list of things I gotta have, but I will eventually probably pick up at least one of these and give it a whirl. Mark says that Korea and Sinai are not related. This is an interesting question, though. That is why I wondered, because Crisis Korea is the game system that would eventually turn into GMT's next war series. And I'm like, wait a minute, did I miss a step here? That's why I wondered about the question. Plus, the two look very similar in terms of the box layout. Perfidious Albion mentions the Glory. Okay, so let me restate this. I'm not contradicting Perfidious Albion here. So, Glory is Berg's kind of slightly simpler version of Great Battles of the American Civil War. I think that's a little bit reductive, but I mean, I think it's fair to put it that way. Berg also did a series from GMT called Triumph and Glory, and I believe there were 2 boxed games in that. One was a big Borodino game, and the other one was just called Triumph and Glory, and I think there's 2 or 3 battles in that. That is the series that was eventually adapted by Frederick Bay into Jour de Gloire, which has since run to cover like 60 different Napoleonic battles or something like that. Mark says that Roger was the art director of that period, which totally makes sense. So that's why there's a similar look. I think it's more similar, because I mean, this is the same year too, right? This looks nothing like that. I would not have assumed this to be possibly a related game system based on the cover. But yeah. And Roger probably did all the counters for a bunch of this stuff. Yeah, that's probably right. All right, so moving on from Glory. Remember, there's 2 more volumes in this, but I'm not sure we're getting to either of them tonight. Invasion Norway. This is another one that has, again, a similar looking sort of cover, very GMT looking cover, as we would call it now. Invasion Norway. Now, this is one that's actually of some interest to me. This is going to be 1940, World War II. We are, in fact, going year by year, Jeff Beeler, but I don't have the information as to what specific order games released in that particular year, so I'm just going year by year. This game looks pretty neat, and I've seen this on a table before. I'm going to throw a look at this. These counters, I think, these look like Roger's counters to me. And I say that because they're very similar to the counters that Roger did for the GMT East Front series, which we'll get to tonight, at least some of it. So this is an intriguing looking game on an intriguing topic. I definitely would rather play this than Narvik from Europa. And we have the map here. Looks like there's actually 2 maps. There's like a sea zone map and a land map, which is, I'm not sure I remembered that, but and the counters are very interesting. We've got, I mean, I'm not surprised by this. The more I see of this, the more interesting it looks. This is going to be the land counters for the most part. And then the one we were just looking at is the naval counters and the planes and some markers and stuff. So the counters look pretty good to me in this thing. And I already like the look of the maps. MIDI Doctors, you should have been here last week. Let's put it that way. I also have positive things to say about Europa. So I feel like I've done Narvik and I don't need to do it again. I would be interested in a different take on the topic. So Jeff Beeler says that it has nice coverage of 3-dimensional warfare, which okay, that sounds very reasonable. This is another one that should not go for $1 bazillion. We have one from the U.S. Let's see. This guy wants one for, this person wants $90. That seems a bit optimistic to me, but possibly not as optimistic as I think. Looks like there's been a dip over the last few months or couple of years. But about $80 seems to be not completely outlandish. Bob, thanks for stopping by. So, and yeah, thumbs up the video, all that stuff. Thank you for watching, and hello to my 2 people watching on Twitch. Invasion Norway. This actually looks pretty interesting, and I should probably, I'm not actively looking for this, but if it were to come up at the right price, I would totally grab it. $90, $80 or $90 is a little more than I want to pay for it, but nevertheless, this looks pretty interesting. And I do find it interesting that we have John Krantz and Joe Youst credited as artists here. Does this map look like... I'm not going to be able to tell from this friggin' image. I don't know. If Joe Youst's name is on there, it's probably either as a designer or the map artist. But Mark says it shouldn't be that expensive, and I am inclined to agree. I'll have to check and see what Noble Knight wants for it, because they've got a pretty good sense of what's going for big change and what's not. So next up, we're going to move super fast here, I think. I'm already moving very quickly. Is 8th Air Force. Now, this is part of this is as an air combat card game. It's part of the Down in Flames series, which is not something that I have played. Yeah, that's a good point. I assume this to be the C3I that has the Invasion Norway cover. I don't know if this is something that popped up later at out of DVG or not. It looks like the answer to that is no. But it does say that it expands Rise of the Luftwaffe and Wild Blue Yonder. That doesn't sound right to me, considering Wild Blue Yonder is a 2017 game and 8th Air Force is a 1995 game. I would suspect it's a little more complicated than that implies. These air combat, I'm not a big card game guy, to be honest about it. And it might be that I just kind of flamed out on card games in the Magic the Gathering and CCG eras. That's possible. But on the other hand, I have played, say, the Pathfinder customizable card game and had fun with that. So there's that. Mark says that 8th Air Force was before DVG. That's definitely true. I'm curious to know if DVG did a version of this later on, because some of Dan Versen's games did move to DVG, but it doesn't look like this one. So designer credits for Roger here as well. I'm not sure what's up with that. Is there anything on the cover of the box? It says game designed by Dan Versen, so that's kind of how I'm taking it at this point. Okay. Marty says that Wild Blue Yonder is a reboot of Rise of the Luftwaffe. Because I was going to say, I have actually almost bought Wild Blue Yonder. So, in any case, a lot of people like this system. And Spare Rib says that DVG did a version of Down in Flames. So, how the two would mingle, I have no idea, and I'm not going to investigate it this time. So, because I do not have the bandwidth to add card games. I did pick up the 2 Napoleonic card games from Compass and Chris Moeller, though, and those actually look fairly intriguing. Next up is one that I probably will have a fair amount to say about. This is Typhoon, the Drive on Moscow by Vance von Boris. This is the, more or less, first game in the East Front series, which continues to this day, and which I'm kind of hoping that we were going to see the second printing of, or edition anyway, of Barbarossa Army Group North this year. I no longer think that that's the case, but we should see it next year. Water. Typhoon here, in the meantime, is what it sounds like. It's Operation Typhoon in 1941, and I believe it runs to very late, I could be misremembering this. This runs to either very late 1941 or very early 1942. I've played this. It's quite a good game. And although the series did evolve somewhat, as von Boris continued to add volumes to it and is now revising it again, you should not be getting midstream ads. There is a way to turn that on, but I have not turned that on. So if you're getting a midstream ad, unless you're watching on Twitch, which then I'm not sure, but on YouTube you should not be getting mid-roll ads. I have experimented with that. It's fucking annoying, and I don't want other people to be annoyed by it. So other than the couple of experiments where I turned it on, I explicitly leave that off. So in any case, Marty mentions that there's a decent-sized group that plays Down in Flames. I hadn't had the sense that they play Down in Flames most of the time. I had the sense that that was like an evening activity, but hey, what do I know? I've never been there. So this, I mean, I don't use an ad blocker, and I'm not getting this kind of, I mean, I do get mid-roll ads from time to time, but ordinarily, that is something that the video creator needs, well, so I shouldn't say it this way, because when they, at one point, YouTube said, we are going to just start putting mid-roll ads in all videos unless you explicitly opt out of mid-roll ads. And I hate mid-roll ads, so I explicitly opted out. And like I said, except for the like 5 or 6 videos where I turned that on as an experiment to see what it would do, it's definitely not on here. Maybe I should check that. Hold on, I can't even do that right now. So we won't be checking. I'm reasonably sure I didn't turn it on accidentally, and I'll be infuriated with YouTube if they turned it on without asking me. That will make me very upset. So this is probably, Tim, if you were to refresh the screen, I bet it would show whatever the actual number is. So I'm not showing a lot either. So Alistair, you know what? I could probably justify this too. The problem is I watch YouTube on 3 different YouTube channels. And mostly on 2, admittedly, but so I'm not paying the premium 3 times. absolutely not. But I could probably justify the cost too. I want to say it's something like $20 a month. And I certainly watch enough YouTube that I could justify that to myself. So, in any case. All right, so back to Typhoon. This is a 3-map game. Am I right about that? Yes, this is a 3-map game. The game system, you'd recognize it if you picked up the latest Barbarossa Army Group Center, which is the most recent release in the series. You would absolutely recognize the game system. However, there are some wrinkles that are not shared between this and, say, more recent games. If you try to integrate them, you may run into some degree of difficulties. But this is a solid series. There's an asymmetric sequence of play where the Soviets do certain things that the Germans don't do, like have to have headquarters and stuff like that. Plus, the sequence of play itself is... That's interesting. The sequence of play itself is different for the two sides, and that is a interesting feature that makes me wonder what the plan is to try to bring this series to later in the war, where the Soviets are a little less limited from a doctrinal standpoint. But the game's pretty solid. My counters are like extra dark for some reason, and I'm not sure why. It could have just been a printing glitch. It's not like I can get them replaced now. I was kind of hoping, to be completely honest, that the contents of Typhoon would end up being included in the new Army Group Center, because that's the logical place for it to go. But on the other hand, that would make the new Army Group Center like a 7-map game. And I can kind of understand why GMT opted not to do that. That would have been kind of that would have changed the scale and scope of the project radically. So, good game though, and I do look forward to hopefully someday they'll redo it. Hopefully, because I like the topic too. Specifically, I like this topic, the Operation Typhoon. Next up is Mr. Mark Herman and the late legendary Richard Berg's collaboration on the Great Battles of Alexander Deluxe Edition. Now, this is a 1995 release once again, and it's a handsome game. However, you should, if you're thinking of buying this, you should definitely buy the more recent edition, because it has a million more battles in it. This actually, though, has like 8 or 10 battles in it. It didn't say there, but if you look at the box cover, you'll see that the 4 battles, I want to say, that were in the original release are in here, plus about 6 additional battles. So even if you have this one, there's kind of a lot of content in this box. I don't know what this goes for on the secondary market. This is weird, because we've got a new copy for $25, which maybe it's not the whole game, and I don't want to look live on camera, and a like new for $70. I don't have this one. This is the one that I had back in the day, though. This is the particular version of Great Battles of Alexander I had back in the day. I didn't have the original. I had this one, which is in a 2-inch box, incidentally, unlike the original, which is in a 1-inch box. So... and as Mark points out, those are the extra battles that appeared in the early expansions. I could, if I wanted to stand up and walk into the other room and grab it, pull this off the shelf and show you the 1-inch box anyway. So, in any case, yeah, we don't talk about that on this show. So, in any case, this is a fabulous game, and it's, even in this edition, it is a fabulous value. It's an even better value now. I would say for $70 or $80, you could probably come close to getting a new copy that has more than twice this many battles in it. So I would once again go for the new one. Not all of these battles are going to be balanced. That's generally going to be true of Great Battles of History, but the scenarios themselves will tell you whether the battles are balanced or not, and give you some suggestions as to tweaks you can do to the battles to make them balanced one way or the other. So, Mark plays the first edition, as I think we've mentioned before. But the first edition only has the 4 battles in it. I guess you can get the expansions too, though. So there's that. Oops. I will also say that, and Mark can speak to this more. I'm not asking for this, but as Mark will attest, there's a significant difference between the modern game system that's used in the current version of this game than between that and the original version. Hopefully that is. Yeah, I mean, they're kind of the same series, though. I mean, it's a separate game that it doesn't say Barbarossa on it. And there are some problems if you try to integrate the two. So I think it is best regarded as a separate game, but I think frankly, there are some problems if you try to integrate any of the other two games too. So I don't know that there's a much bigger of a problem here than there would be in any other case. You know what I'm saying? So, I really like the first edition. I assume here we're talking about Great Battles of Alexander. I really like that cover too. And it's a Roger McGowan cover. And I'm happy to observe that art is still in the new edition. It's just the cover of the rule book instead of the cover of the box. So, now, here's the thing, and Perfidious Albion is exactly right here. It predates the series, but it's basically the same system. Now, there is a predecessor to Typhoon as well. That is the East Front Battles series from 3W. Vance von Voorhees did one game in this series, which I believe is called Battles in the East. That's not what it's called. Blitzkrieg in the South. I think that's the first game in the series. And then the series was taken over by Joe Youst for another game, the second and last in that series from 3W, which is Spires of the Kremlin. I have both. I would actually like to try them. But backing back, I guess we're done with Alexander now, too. Great game. You should have it. 3 Days of Gettysburg. So, you'll have noticed something here. In the 1995 range, we still haven't left 1995, by the way, in that a decent number of these games, not a majority, but a decent number of these games are reimaginings of games that had popped up earlier. So Typhoon is one, or game systems at least, that had popped up earlier. Mike Endring might clarifies East Front Battles Blitzkrieg in the South, and East Front Battles I think was the name of the series, but there's only 2 of them. There were supposed to have been like 5, but the rest of them never materialized. And I think Joe Youst got bored and left 3W after that. So, in any case, 3 Days of Gettysburg. This is the first edition of 3 Days of Gettysburg from GMT, but this is itself a reimagining, a pretty substantial reimagining of Terrible Swift Sword. This is the genesis of the modern Great Battles of the American Civil War series. The rules, once again, here are somewhat different than they would be if you put a modern game in the series on a table. But there are people, and I think Mark Herman might chip in and say he prefers this edition of the game rather than the second or third editions. And there's a 4th edition that is coming. I'm not sure if that's what it's officially being called, but that's what it is. It's a 4th printing of 3 Days of Gettysburg. This is Gettysburg, obviously. It's a big 3-day game. This is not the version of this game that I have. I have the and the one I've played it's regimental level, Brant, and it is slower than real time. But as I have always said, that is not a serious criticism. Now I lost track, given this same old chestnut here. This is not the version of this game I have played, so I can't speak much to this. But what I can tell you is that the maps were redone between versions of this game, because the maps I have look nothing like this at all. So, the joke is old, Grant. The joke is old. Admittedly, the joke is also older than you sprout. Mark says this is his favorite version of 3W. He likes the command system over the later versions. And I mean, I think that's a good reason to, without looking at this command system, that is. That's the kind of thing that might make me prefer an older version of the game. The counters, however, look basically, these are recognizably GBACW counters, though. I think we will all agree with that. So, this is going to be 3 maps, probably. Yeah, it's 3 maps. It's basically the same footprint as Terrible Swift Sword. So it's 3 maps in a kind of triangle arrangement. The problem with the later edition, the 3rd edition that I had with it, was that I didn't feel like the scenario support was very good. There's just not enough scenarios. There should be some smaller scenarios. And I do understand the issues that can arise putting together smaller scenarios given the way this chit pull system works. You might have to scale the chits down a level or two if the scenario got really small. However, we played the campaign and at the end of the first day, we had something that looked absolutely nothing like Gettysburg. And I am aware, as Stigler is pointing out, that they will be the fourth deluxe, whatever we're calling it, the fourth edition or deluxe edition or whatever they want to call it, is going to have several new scenarios, plus an extra map for the cavalry stuff, and it's going to be an impressive package. And I am 100% on board with the new edition of 3 Days of Gettysburg. In addition, this is not my favorite box, to be honest. I don't really like this box art. So, John C. from the sunny Philippines is here. Welcome back. Let's see. Ugh, this sounds awful. I'm sorry about this, Eric Schaefer. Joe Perez says the first edition had some cottonwoods. Hex is where they forgot to add the green color for the tree symbols. Oops. How about that? In addition, I mean, these look like Rick Barber maps to me, so I hate to say that I like the new ones better, but I like the new ones better, frankly. You know, John Stanley, I think this is such a good point that I could almost get a whole hour out of just this topic. Games where pieces of the battle might play better, at least in some way, instead of trying to cover the entire thing. That makes a ton of sense to me. And you might be right. Certainly at this scale, there's a... Oh, I don't think Alistair is the first person to stumble across this particular joke. But, well, you know what? There's a lot of people that, I mean, Stigler has often said that to him, Rick Barber's maps feel more like fantasy maps than wargame maps. And I don't agree, but I also kind of see where Stigler's coming from on a statement like that, to be honest. Well, so the single biggest change, it is safe to call this a reimagining of Terrible Swift Sword. Okay, the whole thing is quite different from Terrible Swift Sword, but the single biggest change is the implementation of a chit pull system, which Terrible Swift Sword did not have. That lets you model the activations of the various divisions. Well. Brigades, I suppose. You're activating by, I mean, I assume it's brigades here. It's currently brigades, depending on exactly what game or battle you're talking about. So, this is also a pretty complicated game system. So there is a simple GB ACW in the works. I'm curious to see it. I don't feel like it's really for me, but you know what? I bought Edelweiss on the strength of the Rick Barber maps, and it's weird, right? I don't know about to say weird, but one does not normally think of World War II maps and Rick Barber at the same time necessarily. Those are World War II maps by Rick Barber, and they do look and feel very unusual, but I also really, really like them, and that's a big part of the reason. I also got a pretty good price on it from Noble Knight. That is a big part of the reason why I did grab Edelweiss. Also, the system looks intriguing as well, and I'd kind of like to say that. I will tell you, Andrew Cook, thanks for stopping by, that in my opinion, Terrible Swift Sword is probably one of the 10 best wargame titles ever. In terms of the name itself, I think that's a really awesome name. It's evocative without saying Gettysburg. I mean, it does say Gettysburg on the box, but without Gettysburg being formally part of the title, everybody immediately knows that it's a Civil War game because it's a line from Battle Hymn of the Republic. And a number of other games have tried to do that with other lines from the Battle Hymn of the Republic, and it has never been quite as effective. So, I mean, I really like Mark Simonich as a map artist. I really like Joe Youst as a map artist. Everybody's got different styles, and that's totally fine. Mark, thanks so much for stopping by. Have a great night and a safe, whatever public transportation you're using over there in New York City. So, and stacking limit's got to run too. So, why is everybody bailing early tonight? We got all kind of good stuff to go through. We're only like halfway through this. Now, actually, would be a pretty good time, even though shockingly, I'm not behind on the chat particularly, to hear from our good friends at Noble Knight Games, the official sponsors of the Counterclipping show. So, take it away, Noble Knight.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more. Going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at. Complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world, just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
So I'm actually not sure if this is still the case at Noble Knight, but they did have their annual free shipping to like offshore stuff. If you are not in the U.S. and want to order from Noble Knight, go check that out. That sale might still be going on. I actually got word was issued prior to last week's show, and I didn't see the email until after next week's show, so I didn't mention it. So, Meandering Mike clarifies that overseas shipping deal is still going on. It's not free, but it's if you order a certain amount, it's free. So it's worth it's worth a look. So this is exactly it. So and Brant's got to go. So there you go. No, actually, he's just coming in. How about that? Anyway, $2.99. Well, hey, it's easy to spend $2.99. I can do that. Hey, I can still kick you. Don't forget that. So, excellent. I probably got the credit for this already. I haven't looked at the breakdown. There's like a report I can pull once the credits come through. But it's not instantaneous. Somebody's actually got to go through the orders and like apply the different orders to different the different affiliate accounts, which is why I don't necessarily have real-time visibility on it. But I have zero reason to think that Noble Knight is messing anything up. Let me put it that way. I have been 100% delighted with the support that folks have given me through the affiliate link. So I'm pretty pleased with that. So in any case, all right. So somebody was it John C. What about? Okay, John C. asks about A Most Fearful Sacrifice, which is a really good game. And it does have a Rick Barber map, a very Rick Barber looking map at that. The deal with The Most Fearful Sacrifice, though, is that, and I think everybody knew this, is that the extra size on that map really helps with the clarity of the Rick Barber art. I think it would be a pretty... I'm not saying I'm saying this. I'm saying I think it would be reasonable if someone were to say that due to visibility issues, they prefer not to play on Rick Barber maps except A Most Fearful Sacrifice. Let me put it that way. So, there you go. Bloody Road South is good. Yeah, that's from the Gamers. I want to say Civil War Brigade series. I don't think that was a regimental sub-series game. We have literally a friggin' million different Confederate commands here. Yeah, it's an interesting map. I think it's a gorgeous map, to be completely honest about it. I love those maps. Now, as I haven't tried to play on them yet either, so that is a thing, a question I will ask at some point when the time comes. So, in any case, moving on from 3 Days of Gettysburg, we are back to Great Battles of History with Samurai. Now, the design is credited here to Richard Berg and Mark Herman, as is the case with most of the GBOH games. John Stanley, thanks so much for stopping by. I didn't know this. I didn't know it doesn't have a vassal module. That's fairly unusual for the gamers. Fairly unusual. I'm not sure what's up with that. Prelude to Disaster. I did not like, from what I have seen, I don't own Prelude to Disaster. It is on the list. From what I have seen, I don't like the Prelude to Disaster maps as good as much as I like the Edelweiss maps. But they are still Rick Barber maps. So, all right. So Samurai is what it sounds like. It's one of 2 games in the series of Great Battles of History that is Samurai Battles. The other is Ron, and that came out quite a few years later than this. We will not be seeing it this evening. This is I want to say these counters are. I don't know why we don't have images of the counter sheets here. People, come on. What's going on? Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. These are 5/8 inch counters. I'm not sure if Ron has 5/8 inch counters or not off the top of my head. I have not played either game. Feudal Japan is not like a super duper high interest for me, but I do have a couple games, these 2, on this topic. Does this game or does Ron include the actual Battle of Sekigahara? This one does, 1600. This is a huge battle, by the way. This is maybe one of the biggest battles in the entire series. Appears in this game. There's some real big battles here. If you've ever seen Kurosawa's Ron, or a movie I like it almost as much is a movie called Heaven and Earth, which is like a Japanese Canadian co-production that's really friggin' good. Totally worthwhile. There is no way I will appear at this event, Brent. I got to tell you, it's the same deal as you know, if it was in May, so I didn't go to Compass Expo in May, is because it's like 2 weeks after one event and 2 weeks before another event. So it does sound like a cool event. This is Brent, is that happening at the Gamers Armory again? So it's a game store oriented show. So Commander Solo says that Bergen, he went back so many times with the rules, he made the head hurt. So many little changes. I mean, this is very different from like ancient world Alexander battles. So as Brant clarifies, it is at the Gamers Army, which looks like one of the best game stores in the country for war games. By the way, if you haven't over on the Armchair Dragons YouTube channel, they've done a couple of store walkthroughs. It's a pretty impressive store. So in any case, we've actually got some real credits here. That's great. So map art by Mark Simonich, Joe Youst, and Leland Myrick. Counter art by Mark Simonich, Roger McGowan, and Mike Lemick. And game research by Masahiro Yamazaki. Obviously, I should take a closer look at the game on my shelf. So, Masahiro, for those who don't know, Masahiro Yamazaki is a very highly regarded Japanese wargame designer who has done some dynamite stuff. Some of which has made it over here, but not all of it. So, in any case, we got 6 battles here. If you're interested in this period at a more or less tactical or grand tactical scale, I would certainly give this a look. This probably goes for decent change. It ain't that bad. $50, that's not a bad price at all. So, next up is another Berg, the Battle for North Africa, not the campaign for North Africa. This is actually, whenever I see this, I guess I'll talk up, because the other game I'm going to compare this to is actually on the list for tonight too, so I will actually wait to mention it. In any case, this is a Berg design. Obviously, it's nothing like Campaign for North Africa, and if we look at the counters, I don't know what this is. That ain't the counters. That's a C3I counter sheet from something. Ugh. All right, so once again, these counters look a lot like GMT. I mean, obviously, they look like typical GMT counters for the period. Let me put it that way. I don't know a whole lot about this game, and I'd actually be curious to learn more. The rating, the BGG rating is terrible, but I don't care what the BGG rating is. I will defer to my own opinion, or really anybody here's opinion, over what the BGG rating is, right? That said, I don't know enough about this game to really intelligently comment about it at all. Is there at least a component list here? Yeah, it's 2 maps, 2 counter sheets. a 20-page rulebook, which is not enormous, and some player aids and stuff. Is there a picture of the entire map, I wonder? I'd really like to see the map, because on the one hand, we have this image. We've got two images here, and I think this is a photography thing. This is... I mean, this looks good. I don't... But this looks different. This does not look like the same map to me. I don't know if it is, or if it's the lighting, or what. So... Stigler, you're confusing MMP with the gamers stuff specifically. The non-game, well, and the ASL stuff. The non-ASL and non-gamer stuff does look significantly more modern than this stuff. These look a bit dated, but I don't hate these. There's nothing really wrong with these counters at all. So, otherwise, I suspect once again we got a Joe Youst map. Was that here? Not in this case, no. I suspect once again we got a Joe Youst map and Roger McGowan counters. That's my guess. Ziegel sucked. What a bum that guy was. Jeff Beeler says Berg's OOB is too generic, which is ironic considering Campaign for North Africa. Next up is Barbarossa Army Group South. Now, there's two games that appear in 1990, I believe in 1996, in this series from Vance von Boris, and this is a light revision of the system that appeared in Typhoon, but it is a revision, okay? This is basically Army Group South. This is something like 5 maps, as I recall. Sort of. It's 3 full-size maps and 1 less than half-size map. As I recall, however, the counter density here is quite a bit smaller than it is in, say, the OCS game on the topic, right? The order of battle is a lot tighter, so the number of counters required to simulate this is lower than it would be in, say, OCS. The map scale at 5 miles to the hex is identical to OCS. The unit scale is similar, but not quite the same. There's a lot of less miscellaneous units in these games than there is in the OCS game. And maybe you can draw a conclusion about order battle research on that, but I would not feel comfortable drawing that conclusion based on the information I have. Let me put it that way. Well, I agree with that. So, in any case, this game, I'm going to move this up. So, Army Group Center and Army Group South both come out. How about that? Did we somehow miss a year? Because I don't have anything for 1997. That does not sound right to me. I might have to dig into that. We might have to have errata for this show. I totally agree with this, Mr. Dave Scott. I absolutely agree. Especially, my eyes suck these days. So I demand really good lighting, and preferably counters I can read. All right. All right. So, in any case, Army Group South is Army Group South, right? I don't know that we have... This is more or less the map layout. You can see here you got your 1, 2, 3, 4. They might have added an extra map to this. I'm not sure. But it's a big area. Yeah, this is adding Kiev to Rostov. So, along with Army Group South. So I think these 3 right here are the basic Army Group South maps, or the 3 that are toward us in the photograph. And then the others are pieces of Kiev to Rostov. Good series. I think this is a series that has a lot of potential. I'd love to see them continue the series, but I've been saying that for years, and it's been ages since we've seen a... no, Stigler's wrong about this. No, this predates me. I heard about it, but no. You guys tried to play this, as I recall, too. I'm not sure that's the best idea I've heard all day. So Stigler mentions that he doesn't think counters get smaller than half an inch. And it is extremely rare for counters to be smaller than half an inch, but not unheard of. I think there is something out there that I can't remember what it's called that may have had quarter-inch counters. However, Struggle of Nations from Avalon Hill actually had 1/2 by 1/4 inch unit counters that you moved around the map, and then super duper tiny hexes too. Somebody, maybe it was Kevin Zucker and maybe it was somebody else, somebody thought that was a good idea. It was not. They're really hard to handle. The biggest counters one typically sees are about an inch, and again, it's pretty rare to see counters bigger than that. If one looks at, say, 1/2 inch, 9/16 of an inch, and 5/8 of an inch, between those three sizes, those cover 98% of war games. So, all right. Craig Alexander, has anyone created more modern, more legible counters for flat top? I believe there are some alternate counters on BGG, but I actually don't like them if they're the ones I'm remembering. So the answer is probably yes. There's probably some other ones floating around somewhere. I would also like to see this, but it's a big game with a lot of counters, and it's kind of hard to do it all. Brant says that the original Car Wars had some smaller ones, and for that matter, so does Thunder in the East. So, but they're very similar. They're like little markers and stuff. They're not the cars. All right, so Jeff Bueller says this era of GMT reminds him of SCS. Remember that SCS emerged in this same general time frame. Carl Crater just purchased Shiloh the First Day from Revolution. Excellent. Meandering Mike says there's some 12mm counters out there. That's just a hair under half an inch. I'm not sure I've seen an example of that. HUN6, thank you for doing this legwork, which I was going to try to do on the sly in another window. Says they only released one issue of C3I in 1997. I'm not sure I believe that, but hey, you never know. This could have been when they were having a hard time, too. All right, and William Aaron says that the new edition of Army Group Center, which is the only one that they've redone at this point, says the Crimea is a separate game from Army Group South. And the map I showed definitely had the Crimea. Yeah, so the caption on that says it was Army Group South, Kiev to Rostov, and Crimea. Crimea is totally a separate game. So that's 3 games put together. Pieces of 3 games put together. I don't think that was everything. I do remember the pedestrian counters, actually. But your whole objective was to run them over. So that was kind of the whole point. All right, so here we have Army Group South, which hopefully we'll see again in a new edition, and Army Group Center, which we have just recently seen in a new edition in, say, the last 3 years or so. Very happy to see this series still alive. I feel like a lot of attention went away from it just because it had been idle for so very long. I think a lot of the attention that the Barbarossa or East Front series might have gotten ended up going to other series because these games had been out of print forever, and there was not a lot of movement, at least publicly known movement, about what was happening behind the scenes, unless you were one of the people monitoring the Consim World folder. So, and yeah, this is true too. As we have discussed ad nauseum, I do not necessarily trust BGG is a tremendous resource, don't get me wrong. However, when it comes to things like dates and stuff like that, there are certain things that I think are less trustworthy. So, and the next one that will come out will be Army Group North, which is ironic because of the 3 like main sequence ones, I guess if you want to put it that way, North, Central, and South, Army Group North was the last one to be released originally. I will totally buy North and South, but you know, you don't have to worry about that for the next year or so, do you? So there's that. Stigler is back. Awesome. I probably need a computer reimage to be completely honest about it. Anyway, For the People, this is a 1998 release. The box cover that you see here is the nothing short of amazing I forget whether this was the box came out in 2024 or whether that was 2023. But this is a just amazing looking box. The game design is by Mark Herman. This is one of the prototypical card-driven games. The one that really solidified if there is a standard card-driven mechanic, it is for the people that solidified that standard card-driven mechanic, which is why I'll sometimes say a Herman-esque card-driven game to distinguish it from certain other styles of card-driven games. But in this particular case, it's very traditional. There are cards, and you have a hand of cards, and you play a card, and you can either play the card for the event or the points, and you use the points to do things. Very similar. This is an amazing game. I have talked about it ad nauseum on many, many, many occasions. Everybody should play this. It is reasonably complicated, but it's not bananas complicated. And it is just an absolutely terrific game. If you prefer a card-driven approach to the American Civil War. If you really want it on a hex map, then I would probably point you to the Mark Simonich U.S. Civil War instead, which or frankly the Eric Lee Smith Civil War from Victory Games, which remains terrific to this day. But nevertheless, For the People is awesome. It's a terrific game. This game is the reason I am a huge Civil War nut now. So. And John C. from the sunny Philippines is playing it right now, so that's awesome. All right, Joe Perez says, issues with the Vassal module for the Greatest Day Utah Beach, and it's having issues that will delay its availability until September. Okay, I did not know that, Joe Perez, thank you. I will tell you that I don't think this is surprising, not because of any problems with the people working on the Vassal modules for these things, but because the GTS Vassal modules automate a lot. So if they're a little more challenging to get out into the wild, that does not surprise me. They are on the list of best Vassal modules, in my opinion. So, I'm going to figure out where these freaking guys go. These are a little bit hard to pick through, to be completely honest about it. Oh, interesting. So, Brant went and dug up the Internet Archive. 98, they've received 3 products from us this year. Okay, so there were 3 products in 1997. Well, none of them are listed on BGG. What can I say? So, no. This is the, actually, that's a good point. I didn't even think of this. Thank you, Jeff Peeler, for mentioning this. So this is, the date on this is actually the Avalon Hill edition. The GMT edition actually hits in 2000, 2 years later. So it's totally out of scope for this this video. But we won't get to it in part 3. So I don't really object to putting it here. Plus, it is an amazing game. So there's that. Next up is what might be my favorite Vance von Borries game, Invasion Sicily. This is a terrific little game. 1 map, 1 counter sheet, couple of play aids, very nuts and bolts. I think this is a terrific Sicily game. It's probably one of my favorite Sicily games. Back in the day, this was when I was like trying to figure out what to do content on. This was one of the things I was going to do content on, and then I started buying other games. Because this is another one of those games that when I got out of wargaming and sold off almost all my shit, I didn't sell this, because I think this is a great game. This was a Ziploc, unusually for GMT for like a full-size game, and it is a full-size game. This came in a Ziploc. There was never a box. One of these days might make a box for this. We'll see. Probably, I don't know. I'd be curious to do it, but I'd need box blanks first. I'm not going to manufacture my own boxes. If I'm doing that, I'll manufacture a replacement box for War in the Pacific, because that box is trash. Counters here look, again, pretty typical for GMT of the period. This, by the way, is the best scan of the counter sheet I've seen. And I couldn't scan mine because I was punched by the time I knew BGG existed. But pretty good looking game in terms of, this says Roger McGowan on the map, which it could easily be a Roger McGowan map. and I don't have it like at hand, so I'm not pulling it out. But you can see that it covers a little bit of Calabria as well, which is pretty cool. This is a cool game. I like this game a lot. This is true, and remember, I skipped expansions here, so it's possible that that is why we didn't have any 1997 items, because I didn't put expansions in this list, because otherwise I'll need like a part 18 to get to 2024. Jeff Beeler bought this game because there are Canadians in it. There are indeed Canadians. Now, here's the question, though, Jeff. Yeah, Canadians do get their own color right here. That's what I thought. These are Luftwaffe. This weird purple are the Italians. These are the British, and these are the Americans, and then these are the Germans, except for the Luftwaffe, which is pretty much the Hermann Goering division, and maybe another unit or a couple of units of Fallschirmjäger. One of which is actual Fallschirmjäger, at least. Looks like they're all rated that way here, though. In any case, I think this is an underrated game. I would love to see GMT redo this. Yeah, I guess this is true. It is a bit unusual, but I don't care. The difference is that you can, there's a little bit of the toe here as well. I believe there is a scenario that lets you basically plan your own invasions and invade where you want. And I think invading at the toe is one of the options. So, and looking at the map, that's absolutely the case. So, again, underrated game, Invasion Sicily, in my opinion. Game number 1 in the Battles of the American Revolution series. I very frequently misstate the name of this game series because they're not great battles, they're just battles. This is the Mark Miklos series. This series remains quite popular nowadays, and is very well regarded, and in fact was played at WBC basically every year. I think Mark Miklos did some guided tours of some of the local battlefields. I think, oh geez, which battle is? Well, it's Newport. At the SD HistCon East, that was this month, actually. That was just a couple of weeks ago. So, which one, Brant? Saratoga? Now, of course, this is one of the 3 games in the Battles of the American Revolution tri-pack number 1. So if you're interested in buying this now, that's definitely the way to get it. But the tri-pack might be out of print. I think there's a reprint on P500 now, as well as tri-pack number 2. Mike, thanks for stopping by. And as John C. mentions, tri-pack number 2 is in the production queue at this point. I don't know that I expect to see it soon, but it shouldn't be too much longer. I think we'll see it next year. So, in any case, Jeff has some nice things to say about the Canadians as they're reflected in the order of battle of Invasion Sicily. And again, I like the game a lot. Next up is another entry in the Great Battles of History series, Caesar Conquest of Gaul. Now, this is one that is now functionally obsolete because if you have the new Great Battles of Julius Caesar, you have the entire contents of this box. There were 3 expansions for this. Well, the last one was Battles of the Warrior Queen, which is the only content for... Gosh darn it. Which is the only content for Caesar Conquest of Gaul that isn't in the new version of Great Battles of Julius Caesar. So the other actual expansions were Gergovia and Karatakis, both of which are fairly hard to get, I gotta tell you. But if you got the new Great Battles of Julius Caesar, it's got all that stuff. Plus all the contents from Caesar Conquest of Gaul. It doesn't have Battles of the Warrior Queen, but I think that might still be available from GMT at this point. Hey, I agree. No argument from me. Jeff Beeler has 2 ancestors in the Ranger counter in Saratoga. That's pretty cool. And then all these other expansions are things that appeared in C3I. Great Battles of Spartacus, for example. Simple GBOH, that shouldn't even count. The titular warrior queen is Boudica, by the way, if you were confused about that. I've played I think 2 of the battles out of this. It's pretty good and feels very different from SPQR or from where it's mostly Romans fighting Carthaginians, or from Julius Caesar, where it's mostly Romans fighting other Romans. This is Romans versus Gauls, or Britons in some cases, and it feels very different. It's pretty interesting. There's also a naval battle in here, and a set of abbreviated war galley-esque rules for fighting that naval battle. This is a terrific series if you're interested in ancients specifically. If you're interested in some of the other things too, maybe. But their games are all standalones, right? I wouldn't necessarily feel obliged to be a nut like me and buy every single game in the series. I would say there's a lot here if you're interested in Ancients Tactical, however, and it's worth a look if you are. And this is not an obscenely complicated game system, though. I mean, it's more complicated than Commands and Colors, but it's not. People sometimes call it the ASL of Ancients, and there's a sense in which that's a informative statement, but it also leads people to draw the conclusion that GBOH is like super complicated, and it's really not. It's middling complicated. Let me put it that way. All right, so next up is an all-time classic, Ted Racer's Paths of Glory from 1999. This is really, in some sense, the game that started this channel. This is not technically true, but I felt like at the time like I had kind of crashed through the barrier when I started doing the playthrough or the instructional series for Paths of Glory. So this is a point-to-point card-driven game on the more or less the for the people model, but Ted here does include a number of additional kind of features of that card-driven mechanic, and consequently there have been a lot of card-driven games over the last 10 or 15 years that have actually used something closer to Paths of Glory's implementation than to For the People's implementation. I have personally not played either Pursuit of Glory or Illusions of Glory. I would be curious to know if somebody wants to do a Western Front one and they could put all the big ones together instead of Paths of Glory. That might be intriguing, but I don't know if that is an actual design intent on anybody's part, and I suspect the answer is no. Now, if you're gonna be super duper finicky about historicity, then you're probably going to have issues with this for what may or may not be well-founded reasons. And I don't get me wrong, I'm sympathetic to that, but at the same time, I think the game just works, and it is a terrific game without being a simulation in any real sense. Complexity is kind of medium, but a bit on the high side of medium. I'd call it a 6 on the typical 9-point GMT scale. I would also probably call GBACW a 6 to be fair, and this is probably a little more complicated than typical GBOH games. It's easy to to understate or underestimate the importance of this game. It's not like, Panzerblitz, where there are dozens of imitators. That's not really the case. But what this did was this showed people that it is possible to have a game about a war whose reputation was this static trench warfare for 4 years. Now, that's not really true, but that is the impression that people had, and previous games kind of reinforced that impression. Games like 1914 and Guns of August and things like that. This shows that it is possible to have a super-duper engaging World War I game. And since Paths of Glory, we have seen a good number of World War I games. And if we look at that period between Guns of August and Paths of Glory, there's really not that much. So, Alan Salazar, thanks for stopping by. This is true for most of the newer games, actually. They'll tend to include the simple GBOH stat blocks, if you will, for the battles in the newer games. or newer versions of the old games is in this particular case. So super important game, super important designer, and just a great game all around. It's a wonderful game. And you'll notice the 8.1 rating in BGG. That's really, actually, I want to look at that. Hold on. This is the third best war game according to BGG at the moment. Now, again, don't take that very seriously, but it might be good for a conversation point or two. And we'll take a look at that at the end because I think we're going to have time. All right. Next up is Cataphract by, once again, Richard Berg and Mark Herman. And this is the GBOH entry on Byzantine battles from 1999. Byzantines, also known as Romans, after 450-ish. This is very interesting in its own for the battles, although some of the best-known Byzantine battles are not in here. We do have this. So the battles here are Utus River, Catalonian Fields, which is a famous Byzantine battle, Dara, Calonicum, Tricameron, Santa Gallica, Taganai, Casilinum. I want to say the only one of these battles that I am familiar with really at all is Catalonian Fields. But there are other famous Byzantine battles that aren't in this box. Now, this also includes this other game called Justinian. This has come up before on the show. I am super annoyed with the way BGG lists this, because they list it as though it's its own completely different product that has nothing to do with Cataphract. The only way to get this is to buy Cataphract. Any edition of Cataphract. There's at least two different printings of Cataphract, let me put it that way. And this is kind of a strategic game about the conquest by the Byzantines, and by Belisarius specifically, attempt to reconquer the Western Roman Empire. This is actually kind of fascinating on its own. And, you know, some people might find Richard Berg large and scary, and his game designs to be overcomplicated. This one's really not at all, so... this sounds fantastic. Play Cataphract after Rebel Fury. Very good. And Eric Schaefer also lost this one in the roof leak. Oh, that sucks, man. Somebody my wife works with actually had a basement flood like last week, like a 2 foot of water type of basement flood, which is way worse than anything I had. Here, right, the old place, we did have such things occur. But they borrowed the dehumidifier, and as long as I get it back, it'll be fine. Are there two different colors here? There are two different colors here. The lighting in here sucks. What can I say? This could be. So there is the plague of Justinian, or the Justinianic plague, which is another one of those plagues that probably was the Black Death. So... I am sorry to hear that, Eric Schaefer. It does happen, but it sucks when it does. What can I say? All right, Jeff Beeler has ordered The Last Gamble from Board Game Bliss based on the unboxing. Awesome. 135 Canadian with tax and shipping. That actually doesn't sound that bad. I mean, it's Canadian money, right? So that doesn't sound bad to me. I will have to confer with my subject matter expert on the exchange rate, which is, of course, Dan. So in any case, Cataphract is another GBOH game, great series. You've got some naval stuff in here too, by the way. So this is a pretty cool. More water. Hold on. There we go. I haven't even drunk that much whiskey tonight. Clearly need to drink more whiskey. Plus, you get a whole extra bonus game in it. And again, if you buy the more recent printing of this from GMT, it also has Justinian in it, in addition to having nicer components. Generally speaking, this has been a very GBOH heavy show, I feel. And here is another GBOH game, War Galley. One of the interesting things, though, about Great Battles of History is it's not a game series in the same sense as you might see in an OCS or SCS or something from the Gamers, where there's a series rule book and you're just playing the series rules with some modifications for whatever specific situation you're playing is. The GBOH games differ between individual games. The GBOH games differ more than that, okay? To the extent that they could do a game like this, which is literally a naval game. This doesn't have the same mechanics at all as any of the other games in the series. I mean, are there some equivalent concepts? There are, but it's clearly a completely different thing here, all right? Now, there are a couple different printings of this, and I'm not sure what Board Game Geek will tell me. This says there's a second printing. I would expect another printing of this to hit 500 sometime in the next year and say 4 months. That's my guess. But I do expect that this will get reprinted. If you have the second printing, it's got an extra battle in it, and the extra battle is one of the big ones. Is it Actium? It cannot possibly be Actium. No, it's going to be right here. It's Salamis is the... There's actually two different naval battles of Salamis, by the way. This is the bigger of the two, as I recall. John C. says that War Galley suffers from counter clutter. This is true, but this is also true of, say, Flying Colors. And it is, frankly, also true of GBOH in general. So this does not bother me particularly. Jeff says that 135 Canadian is about 100 US dollars. That does not seem bad to me, which when you include shipping, which is like 20 bucks on its own, right? So, and Commando Solo has seen miniatures people use these rules, which sounds like a good idea to me, right? And apparently there have been some C3I expansions to this too. So I haven't played this one. I am interested in ancient naval stuff. There's very few games on ancient naval. Trireme is another one that was an old battle line game that Avalon Hill picked up, and I've got that, but it's got one of those shitty one-piece boards that Avalon Hill was doing with a lot of the stuff that they picked up from either SPI or Battle Line, and the board is just absolutely shit. So for that reason, I might prefer to play War Galley. This is one of the relatively uncommon... It's unusual for me to not have a GBOH game punched and clipped and organized. This is one that I have not punched and clipped and organized. This and Caesar and Alexandria, which is another one I'd like to play. So Actium's probably the easiest battle to get into here, to be completely honest. All right, next up is the pretty interesting Tigers in the Mist. This is a bulge game by Ray Freeman, and it's also a very unusual looking cover from GMT. I don't think GMT really did a lot of covers that look like this. That said, this is probably Roger McGowan cover, so that's probably Roger just being good. Are there multiple versions of this? Yeah, that's what I thought. This did appear in Command Magazine in Japan, but there's apparently also a desktop published version from 94, and then a 1999, which I guess puts us in, at least they got the date right, GMT version, but apparently there was another Ziploc version, which I don't think I realized. So if we look at the images here... I'm trying to find... So, this is the Japanese version, and I'm not sure, but this does not look like the same game at all. So, it may have just used the title and nobody at BGG figured that out. That's plausible. This is the one from GMT, and this looks like is this a hex map or an area map? This actually does kind of look like an area map. I've never owned this. And I have a general preference away from, where the hell are these? Here we go. I have a general preference for hexagon maps, while recognizing that that's not necessarily the best solution for a specific game. Oh, look at this. Yeah, this looks like a point-to-point map or an area map to me. So, all right. So maybe they're more closely related than I thought. So there's that, and here's the counters. These counters look super duper abstract as well. This is a far more abstract game than I was thinking. Maybe I'm thinking of a different game. That's possible. Cool cover, though. I like the cover. The rating is okay. It's not blowing the doors off anything. I don't really know much more about this. One map, 2 counter sheets of 5/8 inch counters, 16 pages of rules, and some scenario cards. Might be worth a look. But then again, I have The Last Gamble now. I don't ever need to buy another bulge game. All right. There's two more here, folks. Next up is River of Death. This is Mr. Eric Goebel. Thank you so much for the support. It is much appreciated. Add a bunch to the Noble Knight wish list. Awesome. Yes, I did mention the Pathfinder Adventure card game, and it's a lot of fun. There's a new edition of it out now. I only played the first edition, but I have like everything for the first edition, so I was disinclined to buy the new stuff. It's a pretty cool game. It's a lot like, it gives you the sort of character building feel of an RPG without having to play an RPG or need a game master or any of that stuff. But thanks so much, Eric, for the support. Much appreciated. River of Death. This is the hardest GB ACW game to get. This is Chickamauga. This is the second game in the series that was released as a GMT series. And as you can imagine, it's a fairly big game. Is it 2 maps or 4 maps? Doesn't give me any goddamn information. Anyway, I think it's 4 maps. It's a pretty big game. This thing goes for well north of $150 typically, and I'm not sure what country this person... Hong Kong. Okay, that's cool. Wants only $150 for it. A bargain in Hong Kong, but this person in the US wants $235, which is actually not a bad price for this at all. Don't be shocked to see this for $300 or sometimes more. Now there is a plan that the GBACW people want to redo this, but I don't really know exactly when that is likely to happen. And I'm going to have to wait to do all these, aren't I? I am. Anyway, that's okay. There's only 14 minutes left. I can be finished clipping at this point. Jeff Beeler says The Last Gamble and Ardennes Squad, which I also have. I'm covered on Bulge games, to be honest. Now that does not mean that I will never buy another Bulge game. That just means that I am, generally speaking, aware of the Bulge games that exist and have picked out the ones that I need and have those, and have not picked up the ones that I don't need. It is plausible that another Bulge game will come out at some point, but I'm thinking I'm basically covered at this point, since Danny is not going to do another one. So this was a good... I actually got good change for mine too, because these were ones that I sold off back in the day. I didn't have North, but I did have Typhoon, South, and Center, and they all went for pretty good money, as well as the original GCACW games from Avalon Hill, by the way. So I Manatee, thanks for stopping by. Welcome back. 4 maps, 1,260 counters. So it's a lot, right? It's a big game. It's Chickamauga. It's a big, messy, fascinating battle. I can't wait till they redo this. This and Dead of Winter, I thought, had some messiness problems, some development problems, lots of errata, some scenarios that didn't work. So I'm really kind of waiting for them to redo this before I try to play this. But I do have this one, and I paid about $200 for it. Punched, and I don't regret that, by the way. That's also not a bad price, but I want them to redo this. Let me put it that way. Scott Rowland, Last Gamble was shipped in a flat rate box and packing peanuts at a ding corner and dented edge. I would 100% contact sales@compassgames.com. That goes direct to Bill, and complain about that. I would 100% complain about that. I am not picking on Compass in this respect, because GMT does this too. I don't like the flat rate boxes for shipping war games, particularly war games in 3-inch boxes, because there is essentially no room for padding of any kind between a medium flat rate box on the outside and your 3-inch game box on the inside. Yeah, you can protect the ends, but you can't protect the surfaces. And it's not cheaper to ship flat rate unless you're shipping clear across the country. If I am shipping like Colorado or west from Ohio, then flat rate might be cheaper. If I am shipping anywhere closer, including Texas, then it is cheaper for me to use pirate ship. And yeah, it's probably going to go UPS and not USPS, but so what? It's actually more convenient for me to go to the UPS store because they're open till 7 p.m. than it is to go to the post office because they close at whatever time they close. So, and they're free boxes, and I get the free boxes, but Compass Games and GMT cannot take advantage of this, I realize. between me and my wife, we order so much fucking shit that comes in cardboard boxes with packing material that, you know, all the stuff that I ship out to people in trades and giveaways and all that stuff, I haven't bought I bought some boxes. They're still sitting with the band on them on the top shelf in the rafters because I haven't touched them because I have so much friggin' cardboard here. The amount of cardboard that I have in this house is absolutely staggering. So, anyway, maps have already been redrawn for River of Death. So this is great because it means that the team is already committed to redoing it, which I think is great. I didn't have a problem with the maps, but I want scenarios tuned up. That's kind of where I'm after with this. In any case, Chickamauga is my favorite Civil War battle, so most interested in Civil War battle. So this is a really promising looking game, but I'm likely to wait for the reprint, even though I have this one. So I have had this happen from GMT multiple times, invariably because they shipped in a flat rate box. I think they do that less now, plausibly because I continue to complain about it. But they're not the only people doing it. Like I said, Compass does it, but Compass does it. I point this out. My last gamble, which was just the last gamble, right? I didn't order like 5 games. My last gamble did not come in a flat rate box. It came packed in an actual carton with peanuts and stuff. So I don't know, maybe they ran out of cartons or something like that. But now they're going to have to fix a bunch of people's problems. I would totally reach out to Bill. I'm sure Bill will fix this stuff. So, you know, the ironic thing... Oh, no. The Dave Powell's... The Maps of Chickamauga book and Dave Powell's 3-volume series on the campaign are awesome. The source for Chickamauga, in my opinion. Ironically, my wife, who is not into military history at all, let's put it that way, I actually had her grudging agreement to go to visit Chickamauga, and the trip didn't happen. We were actually supposed to go to Chattanooga to see the eclipse several years ago, and I was going, well, we're down there. Can we go to Chickamauga? And she's like, oh, fine. I actually had her to agree with it. I had her agreed with me, and we ended up not going. So, oh, but it wants firewood. Yeah, here it is. Here's the firewood. So, and the new Chickamauga game's coming from Herman and Flying Pig, too. Very much looking forward to that. All right, last game on the list is a game that has passed through my hands not once but twice. June 6th by Richard Berg. This is a Normandy game with a chit pull system. I have friends whose opinions I value who have said that this game is terrific. I have heard from other people whose opinions I might not value quite as much who say it's a dud. The rating here on BGG is doesn't really tell me anything either way, but it shouldn't, frankly. I have had this and have dumped it both times. In part because I have 3 games on Normandy at this approximate scale. And I just didn't need another one. And this, from me looking at it, this did not look as compelling to me as Normandy 44 or The Dark Summer. So I dumped it. Nevertheless, there's people that really like this game. Now, if we look at the counters, we're going to see that these counters look a little more like Command Magazine counters than the GMT counters we've kind of been looking at this entire time. The map is fine. I'm not sure who the map artist is. It could have been Roger. It could have been Mark Simonich. Who knows? Is it on here? Probably not. Because usually... Nope, it's not. But in any case, it's probably on the back of the box, but I'm not looking that up. This is a fairly decent-looking game. I didn't notice that it was a horrific turd when I owned it twice. It just didn't look like it was doing what I needed it to do as opposed to the other games that I had already, I think. I think this is 2 maps. I think this is 2 maps. I might be wrong. So when I order stuff from GMT, I always specify UPS when I put the order in for this exact reason, because they don't have the bullshit free government boxes. Okay, the least they could do if they give me a free government box is fill it up with government cheese, which is perfectly acceptable pseudo cheese, and I would rather have that cheese. In fact, they might as well package the game in the cheese. It would work better. All right, we got about 5 minutes, so let's just take a quick look at like the top 10. war games according to BGG, so we might get a laugh out of this. War of the Rings 2nd Edition, that is a really good game, and it's totally a war game. That's not where I would put it, but there you go. Twilight Struggle, sure, whatever, it's a classic. Paths of Glory, classic game. I would put that over either of the other two, but that's me. D-Day at Omaha Beach, very high. This is a Decision Games John Butterfield game. It's really good. All the other ones are GMTs. Clear down to Root, which is later? I'm not sure how you're supposed to say that. Now, I will say that the version of War of the Ring that I have played is the 1st edition from Fantasy Flight and not this one, but I don't think they're that different. So, all right. So, what do we got? We got about 6 minutes, and it is like a friggin' furnace in this room, by the way. So, what do we got going on for the rest of the week? I have I'm actually going to pull this up because I've forgotten and I don't have it in front of me. So, we have the unboxing of I, Napoleon, which will hit this week. That is Thursday's video. We also have Gene and some other folks from GMT on the Chit Show tomorrow night. So, folks will want to stay to get tuned in for that. You know what? My grandparents had the government cheese in the house, possibly stolen from the government, but I don't know. I can not claim that. I like Here I Stand a lot, but it's kind of a hard game to play from like an organizing it standpoint because you really do want all 6 players. It really suffers if you don't have all 6 players. In fact, if you don't have 6 players, I'd play something different. You can even a similar experience, like if you've got 5, play Virgin Queen instead. It's not as good a game with the full complement of players, but if you don't have the full complement of players, then it's a better game than Here I Stand. The C in communism stands for cheese. So there you go. SPI, War of the Ring. Well, we got that right over. You might not be able to see it because it's a shelf down. No, it's up on the top. It's right there. Oh, you can't see it. Well, that's bullshit. I have done poor framing tonight. There you go. Right up at the far end right there is the SPI War of the Ring. I don't have the trilogy anymore, but when I had the trilogy, it was in the flat, and I'm not going to play Sauron or Gondor, so I'll take just the main game in the box. I'm cool with that. Compass Expo, there's almost always a lot of conventions you'll see a game of Here I Stand pop up. Compass Expos like this. I've seen it played there almost every year. I see it played almost every year at Buckeye Game Fest as well. So, Ye Old Geezer Gamer, welcome back to the show. Just got Normandy 44 with the mounted board and GMT packed it prop with plenty of styro nuts. Jeff says, doesn't like June 6th's treatment of UK armored divisions, wrong kind of breakdowns. Okay, that's fair. I think that's fair. That's something that I wouldn't personally not have noticed without playing the game. Yes, you can see it on the counters, but I wouldn't have noticed. And John C. has played Here I Stand as well. It's a terrific game. I will not be coming out to the Philippines anytime soon, John, but thank you. I appreciate that. So we have... I'm out of shorts, believe it or not, but I do have some queued up that I have to look at and like screen and figure out which ones are postable and which ones aren't. So more shorts will be coming. You'll see a little more wargaming stuff mixed in with the shorts in this next wave of shorts. I can always just pull stuff from TikTok, but I actually got to do that too. So I am pretty much out of material here, folks. I could have squeezed in another game, but not another year. Had I squeezed in another year, I'm going to pull something interesting here. Had I squeezed in another year, I'd have had to add a half an hour to the show, which I was not about to do. So I am pulling up... Just to get back to 1997, though, is kind of a real pain in the butt. All right, so what I'm showing, the only thing that BGG lists as having been released in 1997 from GMT is C3I number 8. So we have established that is not accurate. There's more of these coming, Jeff. Actually, there's 2 other things I want to talk about, and I hope I have the time right now. First of all, there's the new YouTube channel that I started called Voyages into Imagination. It is where I am going to put like media stuff about books and music and stuff like that I appreciate all the folks that have hopped over to subscribe already. If you haven't, there's a link in that I just threw in the chat. However, there's a big project afoot here at Ardwulf's Lair as pertains to Traveler. I am scripting, and I'm about a third of the way through the first episode, a series about the history of Traveler. We'll see what this turns into. I tend to over-engineer this kind of shit, which means it tends to not get actually done. So let's see what I get done. I have, like I said, about a third of the first episode scripted, and I have the first 4 or 5 slides. Yes, it's going to be a slides type of thing. Those are done, but we'll see. Don't expect this in the next couple of weeks. But I'd actually like to get it done. I just got to finish the writing, because this, I have to script this. I cannot, the shorts, I cannot script, but I'm repeating myself a lot in the shorts too. And I will be able to do that a lot less in a long form video. It's going to be like at least 20 minutes long. This first episode is going to cover Classic Traveler in considerable detail. Not really the mechanics, but it's going to talk about the product line and that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff I love talking about. So that'll be along at some point, but not this week. But in the meantime, I do have, I think I'm moving the Dune movie review video over to the other channel, because that is a better place for it. And it's not like anybody watched it here. So, I mean, some people did watch it here, and those of you who were very complimentary, I appreciate it. But mostly, Judges Guild will get probably a paragraph of script in that episode. But I might double back at some point to do an episode just about the Classic Traveler third-party publishers, because there's a lot to say there. There's a lot of important ones. I don't... Craig Alexander is running 2 games at TravelerCon. This sounds great. There's no way I am going to Lancaster, PA in October. And again, it's just too much stuff. So there's probably 5 really quite important third-party publishers in the Classic Traveler era. And they'll all get about a paragraph in that episode. But like I said, I might branch out. I might do an appendix. I'm already overflowing here. There might be appendix episodes as well. But I'll worry about that when I get to it. Once I get through Travelers 1 through 5 and the Mongoose 1 through 2 and then all the other stuff, it's going to take a while. All right, folks, I want to thank everybody for coming out this evening. Remember that there's a bunch of links and stuff in the video description to support the show, and the Noble Knight affiliate link and all that. And big shout out and thank you to the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair, and to our good friends at Noble Knight for being the sponsor of the Counter Clipping show. The relationship with Noble Knight has been just awesome. I have nothing but positive vibes about the entire thing. So everybody have a great night, and remember, we will be online tomorrow with GMT and company on the Chit Show, so you'll want to tune in for that.